and it feels almost like feels and looks and tastes also like the same. That's why I call it the AI fast foodification of content. We have all these LinkedIn posts that look and feel the same. Same goes with websites and landing pages.
When I looked at the menu, they all look like the same. And I'm not even sure how can I even differentiate what should I really eat. And I can totally see how this applies to the AI world.
Instead of like answering these questions in a clear, specific way, they are trying to use jargon. It hurts a lot when I see those websites that they still don't have customer logos on their hero.
The only credibility Amazon would have is that credit rating, that rating of the users, right?
People are not even gonna stay on your site or scroll down if they don't see something that they can relate to.
Today's guest is Matteo, one of the few marketeers who actually knows how to build AI-powered GTM, not just talk about it. Matteo has spent years as a founding marketeer inside early-stage SaaS companies and now run Genesis Growth, where he rebuilds landing pages, positioning, and product marketing systems for seed to Series B teams using tools like Octave, Clay, and AI. He's also the co-creator of GTM Engineer School, which teaches operators how to build real AI workflows with their hands. In this episode, we break down how trust is built in 2025, why most landing pages fail in the first 5 seconds, and how AI has made content sound the same, and Matteo's step-by-step process for rewriting a homepage and social proof system that actually buyers believe. If you're a founder or marketeer trying to fix your messaging, positioning, or conversion path, this one will save you months. Let's jump in. Thank you, Matteo, for being here. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thanks so much for being here, Rahul.
Absolutely. So before we get into today's topic or any AI or landing pages, I want to ground people. For anyone who is seeing your work for the first time or is listening to you for the first time, please tell me, please explain what do you actually do and why you obsess about what we're doing right now in GTM.
Sure. I mean, I've been in tech for about 10 years now. For about 8 years, I was in-house generalist marketer in C to Series B companies, covered many times the hat of founding marketer. So like building the foundations of marketing and GTM org from the ground up. And since about 3.5 years, I do what I used to do in-house on a fractional basis for my client as a solopreneur of my own consulting firm, Genesis Growth. I normally specialize in product marketing and content services that are heavily AI enabled. So I use the latest and greatest, like AI tools to basically help me do more in less time, but also while keeping the quality very high. I'm extremely excited about the times that we're in because, again, it allows me as a professional to do so much more than I used to, 5 to 6 years ago when I was in the trenches in-house, while also like keeping the quality bar very, very high.
That's great. Thank you so much for that background, Matteo. I am very excited to speak with you for multiple reasons, of course, but the primary being, I always admire people who are running schools because I believe if you're running a school, that means you have an innate understanding, you have an understanding at a very grassroots basic level, which I believe not everybody would have. And because I run a school myself, which is for a different audience altogether, so I understand where you're coming from. So tell me a little bit about how that happened, like what led you to probably start a school of your own. And I think that's fairly successful because I know you have tons of people on the landing page whom I admire, in fact, some of them are actually going to be on podcast very soon if they've not been here.
That's awesome. Yeah. Me and a partner of mine, Jared Waxman, we started the GTM Engineer School earlier this year. We so far had 2 cohorts. It's a cohort-based program that teaches GTM professionals on how to use AI for building like GTM workflows from outbound, but also content generation at scale using tools like Octave, Clay, AirOps, Cargo, and NA10. And we started this because we saw the rising trend of the GTM engineering, and we firmly believed that there was like whether there's a lot of hype on LinkedIn and there was a lot of Clay agencies, owners and operators sharing their workflows, and that was driving a lot of hype and awareness about the entire GTM engineering movement. We just like understood that, it couldn't stop there. Like the learning doesn't stop at the awareness level, at knowing which tools are on the map, and that you can do X things with, if you put together X tools to do X use case, right? You need to actually be hands-on. This is what I think like is gonna define the good and the greats in the AI era, is about actually how to be hands-on and do the thing within the tools that where today's work happen. So we decided to start this GTM Engineer School with this spirit, by bringing the experts of the tools that are actually building this cutting edge software, AI software of AI workflows, and have them bring expert operators as teaching assistants, and have them, like teach with project-based learning to the students how to create workflows from 0 to 1 and then from 1 to 10, basically.
That looked very interesting because I went through some of the learning, some what you have on the website. And like I said, you had Zach, whom I'm bringing on the podcast. I had Matthias really recently. And I can see the kind of work they're doing, and I can see the kind of value, they'll be able to bring to the table. And I would highly recommend somebody who's listening to this to definitely look at the cohort you have. We'll talk about that, and you can probably let us know when is the next cohort starting so that people can look up to you and, maybe sign up. Thank you so much once again for bringing your marketing angle, because that's one thing which I believe we've never had on the podcast. And I have learned marketing on my own, and I believe, there's a trust which is involved in when you market anything. So tell us a little bit about the trust. And you had a strong point of view on trust. For me, when I think of trust, I think of companies like Apple, American Express. I'm sure they are like giants, have been existing for probably years. In your eyes, what does trust look like for a buyer in 2025?
Yeah, so I think like we're in the age of AI. Trust is completely changing, and it's something that I think like people are not really talking about enough. Especially when you're buying software, you're buying something that is innately abstract. Like in the era of in our latest phase of product-led growth, you needed to actually try the product to or have like self-serve or sign up for free, and try the product to actually earn its trust, and or like for the product to earn your trust, basically. And this is also like changing ever, like is going in the AI era is making this trend ever so more important and more true, because now you with the latest LLMs, you actually need to try the LLM for free and then have an output and then use that output to do something else, right? So in that regards, I think especially when it comes to marketing software, everyone is relying on these usual suspects of AIs to generate content, and it feels and looks and tastes also like the same. That's why I call it, not just the AI sameness, but, it feels like fast food, or the AI fast foodification of content, if you'd like, right? So like we have all these LinkedIn posts that look and feel the same. Same goes with websites and landing pages, and that's why it's very hard for buyers to understand what's different or what's better, or what should I trust if everything looks and feels the same, basically, right? And especially if everything looks and sounds like it's AI generated. So what makes it different? So what makes it better? What makes it for me? These are the kind of like things that I think are massively changing, and what makes me excited about, talking about this topic.
I like the example of fast food because I was just, grocery shopping yesterday. And I was kind of hungry, and I don't eat fast food, but I'm like, okay, I want something fast because I have a call in the next 10 minutes. And when I looked around, there were like literally 3 or 4 shops. There were KFC, there were McDonald's, and there were like a couple of other, which I've probably not heard of. But when I looked at the menu or looked at from a distant view, they all looked like the same. So it looked like they had probably had the same menu, maybe the same prices. And I'm not even sure how can I even differentiate what should I really eat if I were a choice. I mean, and I can totally see how this applies to the AI world, because everybody's saying, oh, we are the best AI agent. We are doing this, we're the next revolutionary technology. So how does a buyer make the decision? So let's say a buyer goes to a website. What signals to them that, okay, that I want to believe it? For example, when I go to your GTM engineering school, I believe because I can recognize people. I can see, oh, they're teaching these particular 4 or 5, whatever number of, let's say, technology, which I'm struggling to learn. And if I have a way where I can learn with others, yeah, why not? So I have some way, and this could be my way of believing, what you're trying to show. But let's say there's an AI website today. What should be on the landing page so that people believe?
So the AI landing page probably it's like not a great example, just because if you think about it, like on the AI, it's mostly about like the chat UI and what's like the best trust marker or social proof marker is the first user experience, right? So like what I want to make sure is that when I go to Lovable, for example, and I insert like my prompt, the output gives me the best, like the output that is mostly aligned with my expectations that I put as input, right? But if we take another example, maybe like, for example, like a developer tool or even like Clay, for example, right? Let's say like a go-to-market software like Clay. I think like a landing page needs to answer these basic questions, potentially in the hero section, because everything needs to be crammed into like the least amount of real estate possible, because we're living in a space where we have the lowest attention span. So like the key answer to the core questions need to be answered as quickly and as concisely and in the least amount of real estate possible. But it boils down to answering these core questions, which is like, who are you for? So what is your target audience? What do you actually do? But you need to actually be specific, not using founder lingo or, like too much vision-oriented messaging. You need to actually use capabilities-led messaging. So using your product, what do I actually get, right? And then what you compare to is another key question. So every buyer is carrying a use case. So like they're doing an activity. And so today, instead of you, they're using something else. It can be like a DIY or another competitor, but you need to like deliver ASAP these anchor in your messaging, in your hero message, in your hero section, so that the buyer clearly understand, oh, okay, these like Clay is for doing enrichment. Instead of me using 10 providers, I use one with Whirlpool enrichment, basically. So this is kind of like the type of comparison. And then you need to tell me, why are you different and better than these alternatives, right? So like these are the basic core questions that are very much on a product marketing level or layer of type of question answer. And ideally, you answer them all in the hero section. Then you also that's why you have social proof, which is the kind of like, how do you design and deliver these or architect these the answer to these questions in a way that triggers relevance, resonance, and it doesn't make you need a lot of copy or a lot of like website sections, but you can deliver it in the most immediate format, if that makes sense.
Got it. I think what you're explaining sounds very obvious and basic, but clearly, a lot of companies are kind of missing it. A lot of marketeers who have probably been doing this for years are still missing it. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, again, like examples of these social proof markers are obviously logos of previous customers or case studies or testimonials, but also like proof points like impact ROI stats on the before and after you came to them. And these are kind of like all the usual suspects of social proof. And that's how you trigger this resonance, this relevance, but I think like many marketers or like many companies still don't like miss this because again, instead of like answering these questions in a clear, specific, and down to earth way, they are trying to use jargon or unclear copy, maybe because they are just either too influenced by the founder's vision or they're trying to appeal to investors as opposed to customers or using customers led wording. It's also because, again, like especially when you're early stage and you're trying to find product market fit, you're trying to be everything for everyone. So you don't have a clear positioning. You're not niching down to a specific ICP, but you're trying to instead grab as much of your total addressable market with your messaging, which fails again to really be laser focused on one specific persona or use case. And again, maybe you also I see a lot of people, and it hurts a lot when I see those websites. They still don't have customer logos on their hero, which makes me think, or even testimonials or no type of proof points, no case studies whatsoever. And again, I think just putting those down your website or not knowing how to sequence these type of social proof markers in your landing page are just compounding missed opportunities because people are not even gonna stay on your site or scroll down if they don't see something that they can relate to or that says, oh, this is worth my time, and this is worth my attention, and this is worth me exploring further, if that makes sense.
It does. And in fact, this is one of the things which I teach myself. I believe that social proof is so important because if you think about, if you and I go on Amazon today and try to buy anything, the only 2 or 3 filters which we usually look for is, hey, can I get this tomorrow? Like, does it deliver by Prime? And then this next filter I usually choose is 4-star and up. Now, I don't know these strangers, but I'm still going to believe that, somebody has taken a decision and I want to prevent my loss, or I want to buy things which are actually worth the quality and the promise which the seller is actually claiming, because everybody's going to, and with Amazon, it's anyways, everything looks the same. So the only credibility Amazon would have is that credit rating, that rating of the users, right? So
Exactly.
makes sense what you're exactly trying to say. So thank you so much. Now, I've heard some of your podcasts, other podcasts. I've seen some of your content, and you often talk about clarity over cleverness. And I think that is where I want to really dig deep, because I believe, oh, you know what, I want to be clever. And that's what I think a lot of users, a lot of companies also feel. Because when they feel like they're in the sea of that sameness, they're like, okay, let's be clever. And that will maybe attract users. But you kind of say that that's not going to work. You often focus on clarity. Why is that?
I focus on clarity because I think clarity answers an actual practical question. And again, it probably depends who you're targeting, right? I'm just going to give you the consultant answer. It depends, right? But, if you're targeting founders who are, very much looking for something that stands out, or that have again they crave more for someone that understands them on a vision level, right? And so cleverness might attract their attention or might work for them. But if you are targeting senior leaders like VP of marketing, sales, or finance, I don't think vision type of messaging or clever type of messaging is really going to deliver. Or again, it can probably work as a scroll stopper on a LinkedIn feed, but is not going to help you really describe what you do or what other alternatives you're comparing with and why your alternatives is better than others, right? So that's where clarity really needs to step in. Cleverness can be the scroll stopper, but is not going to help you just explain what you do, basically, or do the product marketing. Clarity does that because clarity forces you, a forcing function to help you as a marketer to answer those core questions that we talked about before. And doing so on a first principle basis and on using also as the least amount of words as possible in a very efficient way. And in a way, again, that it still excites and doesn't put off or bore.
It makes so much sense. And I can recall, again, some of my favorite brands like Apple, as to how Apple always kind of communicate the same message. And we know how it works. Of course, they have this whole brand, and which keeps them compounding, which keeps giving them revenue. But if I look at the most iconic ads they have done, look at how iPhone usually communicates. Shot on iPhone. They don't talk about the specification of how big the camera is, how good the camera is. Is it a 50 megapixel? I don't even know what's a megapixel on iPhone. And I remember they did the same thing with iPod, where they said 80,000 songs in your pocket. They did the same thing with the watch when it came out. So all of these are clever, but at the same time, more than clever, I think that they are actually kind of focusing on being clear and not clever. And I think that what really sells. So kind of makes sense. But I'm getting very excited now. Let's deep dive into the breakdown where you show us one example of where you feel there is a website and where you want to give us a tear down of what can be improved. Yeah, let's dive right into it if you're ready.
Of course, let's do it. So let me just share my screen.
Yes. First, tell us a little bit about this company and then walk us through what's going on in your head. And I think the best way for audience to really understand what is going through your head is, and this is an exercise which I learned a while back, think that, there's a mic on your head and you have to just talk about everything which is going on in your head. Like, hey, I like the color. I don't like the color. I like the way it transition. I like the way they show a terminal-like screen. So whatever is in your head, just don't shy away from making that announcement to us.
I love it. Yeah. So let's go. Augment Code is the website that we're going to tear down today. It's an IDE or a developer environment, basically, where like similar to Cursor, which is like an AI coding assistant, basically for developers. It's again targeting mostly Cursor dissatisfied users. Cursor, if you don't know, is the leading solution for developer productivity. And I have a friend of mine, Sil, working there as a head of growth. So shout out to Sil. I would like to bring this to, to today's tear down. But if we start like looking at the hero section, I can see that there's again a lot of like good things working. Like we have the product screenshot that has motion, and that already is a great social proof marker for, especially for technical audiences like developers, because developers want to really see the product firsthand. Another good thing that works is the CTA with specific terminals as call to actions, because these again are some sort of like social proof markers for that tells the developers that this work on your machines, on your tools, or like VS Code or JetBrains or CLI. So like it is telling the developers that this is working within your stack, right? Which is, again, this is going back to what we were talking about before. It's telling you this is what it is. Like it's a developer productivity tool, an AI coding assistant. This is who it's for. It's for people that work within these environments. And what does it actually do? So it has better context. It's an agent, which will lead me to better code, right? So again, like I have some sort of understanding of what it does, who is it for, how is it better. It doesn't tell me really how it's better. Like this, again, like what I would probably like say is that this is a bit vague, like better than what or better how. I would like to have potentially like these answers, this question answered ideally in this headline before me actually going like scrolling down. So this is kind of like how I'm seeing the hero section. And if I scroll down, I see more messaging here. Autonomous software agents in your IDE and in the cloud. This is not really interactive, which is a bummer because developers love having some interactive product screenshots on hover or on clicks on the landing pages. And you see, like going back to what we were saying, like now is there are some social proof markers, but only when I scroll at the third section, right? So like it's telling me who is augment code used by and how it's actually comparing to others, right? So potentially I would push this up, like at the very, like potentially like here. I would also like try to condense this and this with some sort of like a slider here that really show the key use cases for the product instead of like having them here as under like the product pages. Like you can have just agent chat next at it, like here as a slider, and have like the actual logo ticker up here so that it has more motion and it just like have more social proof right at the top. And then I would have this, like potentially on a more structured table with actual logos, competitors' logo, including potentially also exactly like cursor or like those specific logos, and have more benchmark opportunities or like benchmark stats to articulate more the why the performance is better and basically substantiate the claim made at the hero.
I have a couple of questions. So far, thank you so much. I think I can see what you mean by bringing the social proof on top, because that immediately tells me who are using it, making that trust real quick. I also get the context of when you said better context, like better than who, better agent than who. So if they're saying, we are a better form of cursor, then they should just rightly said that. I remember there was a company, Sentry or something, which clearly said, hey, alternative to Clay, easier alternative to Clay. And I think that clearly explains what they do. Yeah. So I think I see how we could probably inculcate some of that feedback. One of the question I had was, you mentioned, how they should do like a comparison with other competitors. Now, how much is enough? For example, if they only compete with Cursor, but I'm sure there are other, other products out there which are in the same segment. Do you recommend going after the 800-pound gorilla, like the biggest beast, or just pulling up like everybody, like which could be potentially famous or in the same league?
I think it really depends on their target customer, right? I wouldn't necessarily, I personally wouldn't shy away from going after the big boys, especially because otherwise, why are you even on the market, or why are you playing the game if you're afraid of, disrupting or going against some of the competition? In startups, where everyone is battling for survival, right? For the next revenue milestone or the next funding round. It's a battle for survival. So I personally would try to play the game, just know the rules of the game and know how to bend them where possible. But ultimately, you're all playing the game. And if you are doing it, then it means that you have a product to showcase, a product to sell, and you should play it, basically. I wouldn't shy away from going against the big gorillas.
I think the answer I'm still looking for is, how many is enough? For example, let's take an example. Let's say I'm a CRM. Now, it's natural for me to go after Salesforce and HubSpot, but there are other CRMs as well, which could be not as big at HubSpot and CRM, HubSpot and Salesforce. But how many should I pick? How should I even pick?
I think this is more of a question of positioning, again, and anchoring your product to something that is to a differentiation element, right? So a differentiation can be you're either specializing for a specific segment. You can be the CRM for finance freelancers, right? You're like a accountant, basically. And that already anchors you to a specific segment and niche that makes you more appealing than CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce for that specific niche, right? Or you can have a pricing differentiation. You're bringing feature parity of HubSpot and Salesforce, but because you're using AI in the back end, you made your model or your entire product cheaper of several orders of magnitude. And that's another pricing as a differentiation anchor. Or it can also be your delivery model, whether Salesforce is all sales led and you need to go through a bunch of hoops and salespeople to actually get to try the product and a pilot of God knows how many months. You can get started with my CRM in one day, so there are different ways to position your products and have differentiation anchors that make you different or better than those alternatives. And I think that's what's enough, that's already makes it enough, going back to your question, right?
All right. So thank you, Matteo. I think the teardown shows something obvious. Most teams do not have a copy problem. I can see they have a system problem. I do have more questions because I think this seems like this is opening up Pandora box. Now, tell me something. When you walk into a messy sort of a GTM setup, what is the first thing you fix? where the GTM cleanup actually began, according to you?
When starting my engagements with startups, like the one thing that I almost see like everyone under indexing on is building a cohesive and structured messaging and positioning library. And I really understand why, because the latest, especially AI tooling like Octave, makes it super easy, super compelling, and also extremely cheap. So that's what I normally do. I always start my engagements with building an Octave messaging and positioning library, which uses a set of scrapers to combine context from your company's URL, your competitors' URLs, a set of case studies and proof points, links that you can have Octave ingest, as well as other notes and documentations on ranging like sales deck, ICP documents, Notion docs, and so on and so forth. So like I normally create this initial library as a foundational exercise to, again, combine context from ICP, market, and competitors, as well as the product. And then I basically export this as a massive knowledge document and then re-import it into other tooling like Clay or Claude as project knowledge to then inform and ground the AI into creating some other assets, whether that's landing pages or case studies and so on and so forth.
I'm curious, how does Clay come into the picture when creating landing pages? And I could be totally like a novice. I have no idea how that works.
There are several ways of using Clay, and Clay again is like probably one tool that you can use. You can also like use AirOps or Relay. There's a handful of other tools for this. What I like about Clay is that it has a native integration with Octave. So in Octave, you can use what they call playbooks to basically as wrappers of their library. So you can potentially create like an angle to create like a playbook and then a content agent to basically pull from specific sections of the library and ground the AI to optimize it for producing a landing page content. So whether that's a set of headlines, for example, that are grounded in, like competitors' information or product information or ICP information, depending on the playbook that you're giving the agents to. And then you can call this Octave agent natively within a Clay table, so that imagine that every row of the Clay table could be a landing page that you want to create. So like one row can be homepage, the second row can be persona homepage, persona page for marketing or persona page for sales, persona page for demand gen, and so on and so forth, right? And then one column is this Octave agent that basically pulls programmatically from Octave and contextualizes the agent prompt to the specific landing page that you're trying to create. And then it basically creates, like a set of headlines based on a specific set of instructions, whether those are for the hero section or the capability sections or the differentiation section, and so on and so forth.
Interesting. You primarily work with Series A plus companies, right? Give us a dope on what are the problems they are usually facing when it comes to positioning versus a company, let's say, which could be in early stage.
Again, like Series A plus companies, like the one thing that people don't do is having like a set of systems and having and grounding these systems in this foundational context, like messaging and positioning, right? In seed, people just don't even think about it, right? In Series A plus, they start to invest into it, but on a very much static level. So like instead of using like a tool like Octave, they just create a messaging and positioning on a set of documentation, and they treat it like a set and forget type of exercise. And what I see happening most of the times is that it just like these messaging and positioning gets siloed into product marketing and product marketers become those nuances that go around the companies harassing other teams like sales. Hey, are you using this messaging and positioning to be on brand when you write your emails? Same goes with content marketing or demand gen for ads, right? But what, like tools like Octave actually bring is that Octave can be called into tools like Clay which can be used for a set of outputs, or even AirOps or NA10. It brings messaging and positioning closer to the last mile of where the actual GTM assets are produced. And you'll eventually be able to close the loop with this, because when you can see in Clay that Octave agent generated this amount of emails, and then those emails are being sent, and some results are being tracked on those emails, then you can feed back into Octave and say, this playbook delivered more meetings or more pipeline. And the same goes with the traffic on these landing pages, or the same goes with the sales deck that has been used to close this deal, or the ads that have been created for this campaign through this type of messaging angle. And this, I think, is what a great innovation is, or what, like in Series A plus organization, it can really be like a big change difference.
I think we've been talking a lot about AI, and one of the questions I often bring to my guest is where can we still use human elements? So in this case, what parts of GTM would you believe should not be dedicated to AI at all? What must stay human?
That's a very interesting question. I think design is probably like one of, again, a very underrated area of marketing that is slowly becoming more important in companies like Linear, for example, that are using it as very much as a company value and massive differentiator, both as a product and in a marketing level. But I think when it comes to design, and again, your design language or your brand identity do the talking instead of the copywriting, right? And it means that there is a lot more nuances and a lot more unconscious type of processes that you need to embed in your design, as opposed to engineering like some copy, which is what AI is largely taking over now from marketing, right? Whereas when it comes to design, because of these complexities, I think it's a lot more, and the nuances, it really goes back to taste. And that's where I think humans still excel at, because we have taste ultimately is the combination of our past experiences, of what we've been exposed to. And there's a lot of cross transferable adjacent inputs that are not necessarily coming from, the industry where we live and breathe every day. So for example, now I'm seeing a big trend or a trend in using landscapes or natural landscapes as part of landing page backgrounds. And Intercom comes to mind. Cursor has some of them, and there's a whole lot more SaaS that are making this. Even the Aura app, I don't know if you're using Aura, as a health app. They're having these landscape of mountains or nature, and I think this again, it comes from a specific trend that is where even going back to the augment code example that we've seen before, all the SaaS or every SaaS website looks and feel the same. They're all white with blue CTAs, and all the developer tools like Linear are all dark mode, white on black, right? Hardcore minimalist simplicity, right? So if you inject a level of differentiation, like a mountain or a natural landscape in the background, that's already something that is, a bit more, again, maybe coming from the desire of reconnecting with your human element. And again, maybe this came from an insight that was driven by this, a taste of a design director, for example. Long answer, but
No, I know what you mean, because I think when I was designing my own website, we kind of scraped through almost every AI company website, which was born in the last 2 years. And I kind of agree with you. Everybody has the same template. Everybody has the same CTA. Everybody, it's almost impossible. And I think if I were to talk about, there were hardly 5 companies which we really like, who were able to clearly demonstrate what they were doing, or were totally different. Probably one of them was Rippling. Vanta was one of them. And of course, we're talking about big companies, but at the same time, it doesn't change the fact that, when they have understood this really well. I think there's a lot of inspiration which we can take from all these companies when creating any website. So I know what you mean. And about Aura, I think I'm a big fan of Aura. I don't use personally Rinks because I work out and it doesn't, it interferes with the whole workout a lot. Great. I think this is going fantastic so far, Matteo. I think I do have a couple of more questions. Tell me something. If let's say a marketer or a marketing team had only one weekend to rebuild their homepage, what should they do in that weekend? What kind of exercises? What can they do like as a team?
I would again start with the foundations. I would probably spend a couple of hours setting up my Octave library and making sure that I have as foundational context about company ICP and market competitors as possible in one place. Then I would move on to the wireframe exercise. So I would probably spend about an hour or two on creating a wireframe that has those specific website sections that again answer those key questions that we talked about at the beginning of the pod. So who are you for? What do you do? What are the alternatives? How are you better than the alternatives or different? And then some more logistics questions, which are how much is it and how do I get it? Again, this is also the bare minimum that the buyers need to know to evaluate your product and make a decision on what's the next step is, right? So embed these best practices in a wireframe and then do some research on how can you actually make them come through with design elements that are a bit different. You need to strike a balance here between resonance and familiarity and differentiation. You don't want to be too differentiated, otherwise you risk that people will you'll alienate people because they will oh, this is not for me. I'm looking for B2B software here, so it has to match some palette of resonance around that specific area. But you don't want to fall into the sameness trap either, right? You don't want to be white with old blue CTAs, 99.99% of other market players. So you need to strike that balance. And that's where I think the most of the time in terms of design research goes. And that's where also design talent really shines and human taste, what we talked about before. But I think all of this can be done in half a day or 3/4 of a day, I would say. And then you can set up a clay table or even a simple prompt to crunch the copy for all the landing pages sections. Then you import the copy inside your wireframe, and then the second day would be handing over to the designer or developer directly if you're already on Webflow or Framer, one of these modern CMSs where you can do design and coding at once. And that's where you bring it to life, basically. And again, depending on the speed, quality of the designer, you can probably crunch one page out in half a day. And I would spend the second half of the day doing QA and trimming some copy and before pushing it live.
Amazing, yeah. Matteo, this has been insane. I think we covered trust, clarity, social proof, design, system, mistakes, AI workflows, all the tools which you're possibly using. My last question, and this is something which is, I'm guessing, in everybody's mind who's listening or going to watch this. If someone wants to go deeper with your frameworks or your work and see any of the other tier down and learn from you, what is the best place to find you?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm always there. Most of the time I'm spending on social. I'm there, often sharing some of my prompts on my frameworks or new resources. I have a set of custom GPTs that I'm working on now that I'll be sharing soon for free with my audience. And I occasionally write my Substack newsletter. So that's also a good place to get some more in-depth deep dives on a bunch of topics that are part of my work.
Amazing. Thank you so much once again, Matteo, for being here.
Thank you so much, Rahul. It's great to be here.
Likewise.